I had this random thought earlier today. One of the things that I miss, 90s sitcoms. Where'd they go? And yeah, they weren't always the best and they were kind of cheesy, but so are the Packers and we like them fine. What's up, everybody? Welcome to part 2 of whittling our way down all the way through the 90-man roster of the Green Bay Packers with one interesting fact about every single player. A little training camp primer, if you will, a little get ready for football season type thing, because I'm trying to find facts that aren't so obvious all the time about every single one of these guys. So yesterday, if you missed it, was part 99 through 81. So go check that out. A little bit of shame if you haven't seen it yet, but it posted late, I get it. So today, part 2, 80 through 61. And of course, that means that we're starting with Bo Melton. But before we get to that, though, one super quick reminder, and I'm not going to talk about it long. Patreon, we have one. If you like what we do, throw us a few shekels and consider joining, because I want to do some really cool stuff. Can't do cool stuff till we have a couple more people, so consider it. All right, moving on. Number 80. He's wearing number 80, but it's number 1 in my heart. That's Bo Melton. See, a lot of people kind of presume him to be the number 5 wide receiver at this juncture for the Packers, and that's fairly obvious, right? You got Wicks, Reed, Dobbs, Watson. There's certainly a great cluster ahead of him. But Bo Melton did some pretty special stuff in a relatively small sample size last year. He was only active for 7 games of the year, 5 in the regular season, but he made a massive impact in that time, including being the Packers' lone 100-yard receiver. But PFF really drives the point home with some staggering numbers. See, because in his small sample size, Bo Melton was the best offensively graded receiver on the team last year with an overall grade of 83.4. He was the top receiving grade, also 83.4. The top yards per route run with 2.68. The top QB rating when targeted at 124.5, which is absurdly high. And he also was the best graded run blocker on the entire team, O-line included, the entire team, for the 5 regular season games when active. So yes, in short, the Packers do realistically have 4 burgeoning stars at wide receiver that may very well be ahead of Bo Melton on the depth chart. But y'all, Bo knows, and he might be the truth. Also, just a little aside here, I talked about Bo a ton in training camp last year, and if you're interested in those nuggets this year, come along for the ride. Next up, number 79. Yeah, the big fella, that's Travis Glover. And I'm just going to start right now by saying, if you like O-line, today is your day, because this is so much O-line today, and Glover just happens to be the first one. Also, I'm going to throw in the aside, too, a lot of PFF talk today, because there's just not that many metrics that happen to judge offensive line. PFF does. No, they're not perfect, but, it is what we got. So let's talk Travis Glover. Thus far, all the talk has really been about Jordan Morgan, and rightfully so. He was the first-round pick. But he's not the only rookie lineman that does seemingly have a little bit of versatility between maybe playing some tackle or guard, because it's a little bit of a question right now as to where Glover may eventually wind up for his pro career. See, Glover did play 789 snaps at left tackle this last year, and the majority of his snaps overall have come at that spot. But in 2022, Georgia State asked him to do something a little different. That year, he logged 40 snaps at left tackle, 346 at left guard, and 326 at right tackle. That year, Georgia State just happened to rank again in the top 15 in rushing yards of all schools in FBS. Player number 78, that would be Luke Tenuta. You want some bloodlines? Yeah, here's some bloodlines. The man comes from an athletic family. This comes straight from Packers.com. Luke Tenuta has also played baseball. But for his family, his father, John, played defensive back at the University of Virginia from 1978 to 1980. He also went on to coach 40 seasons at the collegiate level and is currently the defensive coordinator / linebackers coach of the New Orleans Breakers of the USFL. His mother, Dory, played basketball at Virginia. His older brother, Zach, also coaches linebackers for the Breakers. Little nepotism there, but whatever. Another older brother, Matt, played professional baseball with the Monterey Sultans of the Mexican League. So, in amongst all of that and the accolades there, Luke Tenuta reaching the NFL, he might be the most accomplished of the bunch. Next up, number 77, that is your first round pick, Jordan Morgan. Per PFF, Jordan Morgan finished as one of the top collegiate offensive linemen last year, regardless of draft class or position. See, Morgan finished 16th amongst all offensive linemen in pass blocking, and 48th amongst all offensive linemen in run blocking. And you may not be thinking, 48th, it's not great. We're talking against hundreds of college offensive linemen. So you want to narrow it down a little bit? Let's make it just tackles. Well, then all of a sudden, Jordan Morgan ranks in the top 15 in both categories. You want to make it just draft eligible tackles from this year's draft? Well, he's top 8 in both categories. The only other individual who can say that they were top 8 in both the categories as a tackle in this year's draft class, Joe Alt, who happened to go 5th overall. All of a sudden, if you're still questioning why the Packers took him in the late first, being compared to Joe Alt is not bad company to keep. Number 76, that's Kadeem Telfort, standing in at 6'7", 322 pounds. Telfort was someone who truly actually got better at a portion of his craft over his 3-year career. As I talked a little bit about yesterday, so many times at these PFF grades over the course of an NFL career or college career, you see natural ebbs and flows. One year they're better at one thing, the next year it takes a step back. And there's tons of context as to why that might happen. Telfort, though, at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, over his 3 years, just got consistently better and better at run blocking. His first year, his run blocking grade, 62.6. The next year, 70.8. The year after that, 72.9. That final year was also his highest graded overall season in college, and he also was penalized the least that year as well, ringing up only 4 flags. However, the year prior, he was flagged 9 times, which was tied for 16th most amongst all tackles, which doesn't seem so bad. 16th most doesn't sound awful, until you realize that the list of tackles with at least 200 snaps was over 320 people that year. So it wasn't great, but the next year, only 4 flags. He did get a lot better. Player number 75, that would be maybe starting right guard this year, Shawn Ryan. And I got to say, if you're on the YouTube version of things, that is the nicest picture of Shawn Ryan that I have ever seen. Downright handsome in that photo. But what wasn't so good was some of his numbers. Okay, now I'm a Shawn Ryan fan. I want the best for him. I don't know. I still think probably starting Jordan Morgan is the best thing that they can do for the best 5. But I would love it if Shawn Ryan were to become a great player. But the following are all facts. In my divings into PFF, see, I remember years ago when Jake Hansen got a 1-year start at guard, or a 1-game start, I should say. It was week 1. And his blocking grade in that game was 14. And we all talked about how that was one of the worst blocking performances ever seen, and the man should never play football again, and all those exclamatory statements, right? Okay, well, take a look at Shawn Ryan's numbers for this year. I was a little surprised and overall disappointed because Ryan logged the following pass blocking grades. At San Francisco in the playoffs, 12.7 in 14 snaps. In the wild card round against Dallas, 39.4 in 12 snaps. Week 15 against Tampa, 34.8 in 26 snaps. Week 13 against Kansas City, and even 30 in only 6 snaps. And the real doozy, I know it's a small sample size, but it's still awful to see. Week 11 against the Chargers, the man only played 4 pass blocking snaps. You want to know what his PFF grade was? 0.0. Overall in the season, Ryan had 122 pass blocking snaps. He allowed 8 pressures and 8 hurries, resulting in a 96.7 efficiency rating. Yeah, he had moments in his run blocking. Yes. And there were games that were better than the ones that I listed in pass blocking. Yes. But those are some problems. And if he really wants that right guard job, that's something that just straight up has to improve. Moving on to player 74, Elton Jenkins. A twofer of facts. Just to remind you that Elton Jenkins is really good at his job. See, because we don't really talk about Elton Jenkins that much. Guy's still really good, even if his last year wasn't the best year he's ever had. He was selected to his first career Pro Bowl in 2020, becoming just the third offensive lineman in team history to be named to the Pro Bowl within his first 2 seasons in the NFL. To find the other 2, you got to go all the way back to 1952 with Durrell Tatik and Charlie Brock in 1940, 2 guys who would go on to become Packers Hall of Fame members. Also, he started games at 3 different positions in 2020, that Pro Bowl year, 12 at left guard, 3 at center, 1 at right tackle, becoming the first Green Bay offensive lineman to start a game at guard, center, and tackle in the same season since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger. Look, the Packers are over a 100-year-old franchise. Whenever you do something that hasn't been replicated in 54 years, or in even longer than that, we're talking like 70 years? Yeah, it's noteworthy. Elton Jenkins, still good at football. Number 73, the new addition, Andre Dillard. When the Packers signed Andre Dillard, there was talk of why he was a fit, because he's coming off a fairly disastrous season for the Tennessee Titans last year. You know, we talked before about like the pass blocking wasn't great, and he's really high up there on the sack list, and it wasn't great, right? Well, Matt LaFleur, after the signing, mentioned that one of the reasons they still like Dillard is they believe he's a perfect scheme fit, but also he mentioned his athleticism. So I want to dive in and see just how athletic he was. When he was drafted in 2019, his relative athletic score was 9.81. That was the second best out of all draft-eligible tackles that year. But you know what's even more interesting? There was one guy that was really close right behind him at 9.8 even. So Dillard, 9.81. The other guy, 9.8. You want to know who that guy was? Josh Nijman. Also, I did just want to point this out. This isn't the overall fact, but Dillard gets 2. In ESPN's run block win rate standings, you know who was the 10th best tackle in the NFL last year in run blocking? Yeah, Dillard. Maybe he's not the last lost cause of tackle that we've all kind of been thinking. Now, as for the next guy, number 72, mountain of a man, Caleb Jones. This is the same exact fact that I used last year, and I don't even feel shame about it because I'm going to keep on using it because it still rings true. Coming in at 6'9", he is the tallest Green Bay Packer. Weighing in at 370 pounds, he is the heaviest Green Bay Packer. And the weight one? It's not even close. He's a full 32 pounds heavier than the next guy, Jonathan Ford. I continue in all of my words. I find it difficult to truly articulate just how big Caleb Jones is. So I'm just going to keep on using that one. Next up, number 71, Josh Myers. Speaking of former Packers being startlingly close to current ones in all different regards, let's talk about Josh Myers. Now, I will say, I don't think that Myers is the offensive line sieve that some people make him out to be. I don't think he's the worst center in the league. I don't think he's awful, right? There's a lot of rhetoric around Josh Myers, and a lot of it's really, really harsh. I think a lot of it does go over the top. But for those of you who do think that Josh Myers is truly awful, PFF does tend to agree with you, no doubt about it. See, just to compare, Myers in pass blocking efficiency finished 17th amongst all centers last year. Pass blocking grade, 18th. Run blocking grade, 27th. Overall offensive grade, 25th. Meanwhile, a different former Packer without the high draft pedigree finished this following. 18th in efficiency, 1 spot behind Myers. 29th in pass blocking. Now that one's a big difference. 11 spots different. Myers better. 22nd in run blocking. That's 5 spots better than Myers. And 27th in overall offensive grade. Just 2 spots behind Myers. That former Packer, Lucas Patrick. Yeah, the starting center for the Bears. By most grades, by most metrics, making less money, being more experienced, just not re-signed by the Packers years ago because of people like Myers. Turns out he's playing about at the level that Myers is, at least per PFF's thinking. Now, Patrick did play about 300 snaps fewer over the course of the season. And of course, the center job is a lot bigger and more involved than just blocking. We know about the line calls. Stenovich has talked about it. Butkus has talked about it. Yeah. But still, for Josh Myers to be this close in the rankings to Lucas Patrick, and I like Lucas Patrick, it's just not a great look for Josh Myers. Up next, number 70, Newman. What in the world happened to Royce Newman? Back in his rookie season of 2021, there were 10 rookie guards who played at least 200 snaps. Of the 10, Newman played the third most snaps, over 1,000 snaps his rookie year, while giving up only the 5th most pressures and the 6th most hits. And 3 of the guys that are behind him on that rankings wound up playing less than half the snaps that Newman did. He even had a higher pass blocking grade than Landon Dickerson, the guard for the Eagles, who would go on to be a Pro Bowler. There was truly a time when Royce Newman looked like possibly a future starter week in and week out for Green Bay. It looked like he could stand out in this draft class, admittedly a weaker guard draft class, but nonetheless, it looked like he had a chance to stand out, and the numbers were there. It just hasn't gotten better for Newman, and the numbers show it. Next up, no 69, no 68, but we do have a 67 in the form of Donovan Jennings. Talked about Jennings a bunch with, the signing bonus. I think he's going to make the 53. But one thing that I wanted to dive into was he is probably going to be playing guard. He was a tackle in college. He's switching to guard. There's one other versatile offensive lineman that I really wanted to compare him to. I know maybe a little bit small on your screen, and if you want to pause it, go nuts if you have the visual. But Donovan Jennings, when you change his RAS profile to being a guard, comes in at 9.65. Elton Jenkins, if you look him up in RAS, he's listed as a center, but if you change his to guard, 9.59. And then you dive into the specifics. Oh, yeah, them numbers real close. Interesting. Next up, number 66. Yeah, like I said yesterday, when you got your number retired, you're in the Hall of Fame, you get your name in gold. 66, Ray Nitschke. Now, 65, that's James Ester. Let's be real. Probably not a super high chance to make the roster. But you know what? This dude's got a resume that'll go far in life. In college, he was a 2-time team MVP. Dude's a defensive lineman. That can't be that easy to do. 2-time team MVP. But also, listen to the rest of this. 3-time all-conference choice. 4-time captain, including being one of only 2 underclassmen named captain during his tenure. He also is a semifinalist for the National Football Foundation Scholar Athlete Award and Campbell Trophy. He also earned academic All-MAC honors. He was one of 5 NIU Huskies named to the National Football Foundation's Hampshire Honor Society after posting a 3.33 GPA, and he also is awarded NIU's Mr. Victor Husky Award, which celebrates student athletes who epitomize outstanding athletic, academic, personal development, and community service achievement. That's a resume, y'all. Moving on to the next guy. That's number 64, Spencer Waiga. Remember yesterday how I mentioned Jonathan Ford had a great 2020 because he had 12 stops and amongst 13 tackles? Yeah, this fella ain't going to be outdone. His last year in school at North Dakota, he logged 19 solo tackles, 11 assists. So do the math there. 19 tackles, 11 assists, 26 stops. He also registered 10 sacks, 5 hits, and 23 hurries in 38 pressures. When he gets a pressure, he makes it count. When he gets a tackle, he makes it count. The only question with him is, will he make his chance in Green Bay actually count? Next up, number 63, Rasheed Walker. Rasheed Walker. There's some talk about should Morgan replace him, whatever. Rasheed Walker played awfully good down the stretch, including locking up Nick Bosa for stretches of time. And funny that I should mention the 49ers because Rasheed Walker was second in pass block win rate last year, according to ESPN. The only player that he was behind in the whole NFL for tackles, Trent Williams. To further compare the two, you want to know what Walker's cap number is this year? $1,005,000. Trent Williams, $31,568,000. Next player, number 62, Jacob Monk. Found an interesting little nugget when comparing the Packers rookie linemen. See, in the last 2 years, Jordan Morgan blocked for over 900 passing plays. On those plays, he gave up only 3 sacks and 30 pressures. Travis Glover played over 700 passing plays, 5 sacks, 24 pressures. Jacob Monk, over 700 hit as well, 1 sack and 33 pressures. Sure, he gave up the most pressures of the bunch, but also the least sacks. And our last player of the day, number 61, now for the Green Bay Packers, Likeitu Smith. And you might be thinking, oh, that's a bottom of the roster guy. Yeah, and he very well might be. I mean, after all, he was signed after the rookie camp. Even though he wasn't a rookie, he still was invited because he doesn't have much NFL experience. But you know what? He does have some. Smith has played. See, not in 2023, he didn't make it all then, but in 2022, his rookie season with the Arizona Cardinals, he played in 10 games and started 2. For PFF grading, no, it was not spectacular, not going to lie. But when looking at the Packers' depth on the offensive line, there's not exactly a world of experience there. So any starting time in that area, a bit of an anomaly. And there you have it. That is 80 through 61 facts about all of them. Now, tomorrow, going to be kind of a dual day around here. You might have to catch up later, I understand. But at 4 o'clock tomorrow, that's going to be LTB Live, the return of LTB Live. Me and Claudia will be here answering questions, hanging out, just chatting, anything Green Bay Packers as we get ready for training camp. But also, sometime tomorrow, I'm not going to lie, I'm not sure if it's going to be morning or evening, but sometime tomorrow is also the next segment, part 3 of working through the 90-man roster. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me here on Lombardi Time Brews. Do hope you're having a fantastic week. I'll see you twice tomorrow. And as always, go Pack Go.